Fred Mercury was the king of show business. With the long hair and lovely voice that it wasn't always love that melted hearts his co-workers in the music business, even though he was known for how charming Freddie had his own smile and wink. Moments of grins when talking about some well-known names in the business, fights with someone. Please let me go of these studio moments. Let's look at the Freddie's world has some interesting collisions. Michael, can you guess who made him mad? There's a story here that sounds like it should have been a classic song, but instead became one of the pop songs that could have been background on Freddie Mercury and Michael, two of the most electrifying songs by Jackson, icons of a genre that have never been seen on stage, did work together. Yes, they did. They used the same studio to record demos. And they even began to make a friendship, but the magic never happened. Quite materialized the way fans might have hoped you'd think of that when those kinds of supernovas hit something. Out of this world would come a track that time is bent, charts are broken, and leaves made the world gasp, but what we got was an interesting but ultimately collaboration that will fail. Why? Well, part because they liked each other so much. Some other Mercury and Jackson were in a lot of ways of living in very different worlds. Freddie even said it himself when as I talked to him, I think, my God. I'm 37 and he's 25, but he's been in business longer than I have. He said Jackson had been, as they say, being on stage since he was a child. A motto Mercury shaped a star for life, on the other hand became famous afterward with a fire born in the rough parts of London, the sweat of rock stars in clubs, opera houses, and in rock and roll music. They ruled their own kingdoms. Jackson with his soulful pop, Mercury with dance beats, his sporadic glam rock is still the Jackson really did deserve praise. Queen fan, and more than that, his voice said he'd show up at their concerts in the early 1980s. They often watched amazed by the large crowd at the Forum in Los. It looks like he liked us, Freddie said in an interview in 1983 that he kept coming to see us, and then we began. I think he would have talked back then. Go outside, he'd leave and have meal times. I remember having dinner with Jackson and he respected each other. Once told Rolling Stone straight out, I'm a fan of Freddie Mercury, not Queen. Freddie in that respect made something in 1983. They broke into Jackson's home studio to see what could happen. The end, there must be more than 3 demo tracks. A better life than this, state of shock and victory now, but that's just a dream on paper. We should work together, but let's say the chemistry didn't lead to for a long time. Freddie used magic to a certain studio vibe that moves quickly. Jackson at that, a passionate, team-based point, was getting more and more separate, more strange, according to Freddie's. Things got a little rough with manager Jim. Miami Beach weird. He got a frantic call one day from Freddie, get me out of the studio, you can record with a llama. Yes, a llama. It looked like Jackson had started he brings his pet llama to the studio every day. That might have seemed fine at the time, it didn't quite fit in Neverland. Mercury's idea of a creative person setting, I'm not used to it at all, he informed Beach, and I've had enough. Well, to be fair, there wasn't really any anger after that, just the seeing that they were in Freddie's, 2 different people. Jackson was spending more time alone. Would rather stay in and by whatever he had to stay away from the outside world. That's not me at all. Freddie said it. I hate the time I go out every night being stuck in one room for too long. Anyway, their lives and energy were just going in the opposite direction. Still, not all was lost, and Freddie was eventually set free. His version of There Must Be, by himself, more to life than this, was his first track. After many years, the album Mr. Bad Guy came out. 2014 was a long time coming for Queen fans. The first Mercury-Jackson collaboration was finally made public on This Is the Queen Forever compilation of the rest of Queen Elizabeth II, Roger Taylor, John in the 1970s. Deacon rock music was Queen changed the sound of a band that didn't just played songs but did them like a show on Broadway in a dirty pub. Bands and guitarists with long hair. Queen's a sense of theater and operatic ambition broken up. They thought their sound would hit like a tidal wave full of layered melodies, high-pitched vocals centered around the brave cosmic stage of Freddie Mercury being there. They didn't ask to fit in, just stunned by how glam rock became something religious and bigger than life. Queen Elizabeth II wasn't just smart. She was their fearless new ideas and defiance. A lot of the early songs were too long, weird, or different for radio, but tracks like Bohemian Rap became popular all over the world. Despite doubts in the industry, they wrote for Soul Not Charts as making riffs and beats that were impossible to ignore. Freddie's voice could scare or cheer you up. Because they didn't follow the rules, rock a new magic bold that will stands out, and the Queens are deeply connected at their core. As a way to celebrate freedom, they broke rock's men who are rigid and follow strict rules, bringing flamboyance, theater, and being unique. They fought against heteronormativity and singing simple things like painting eyeliner falsetto and making music for the future. Outsiders were drawn to their wild energy. They are icons for people who seem to be different. Artists like Kim Gordon, thought of Queen as one of the great bands of all time, have been praised for their clever melodies and singing. Queen's arrangements weren't crazy. For the show, their music was spread out and blending genres with care and defying boxes. For artists it was a surprise, but many rock purists sneered at their flashiness and style. They liked real music that was raw and serious, and Queen's sexy style didn't fit. This made Queen one of rock's. You'd think that the most controversial bands on the Queen achieved all of her goals. The albums that packed arenas to the brim. The whole world loves everything. It was just as golden behind the scenes, but the truth is, like many great bands, more difficult than the picture. Freddie Mercury, for all his badassery and charisma, wasn't one to hide things. The truth is that during an interview when promoting the books in 1984, he was honest. He said that between him and his friends in the band, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John, there was nothing else left. That wasn't anger talking. It was being honest, because while they were dating as a band, worked on a personal level, the connections weren't almost as strong at that point. Weren't hanging out outside of work or having dinner together on tour. Living together for the sake of the music. And for Freddie, someone who was deeply interested in art and coming up with that kind of distance, it was clear that some of the tension came from how things went after their 1982 album Hot. It was a risky move to jump into space, funk, electronica, and dance music. Freddie pushed hard for it, saying, I'm not afraid to try anything once. Of the problems, he said, I like the challenge, and I like to do things which aren't typical for me. It was typical Freddie, always brave. After what was fresh and new, but the business risk didn't pay off, and he agreed that his critics were not very nice. With a hint of truth, but mostly in jest, that he made the other three leave. With the thought, they hate me now, he laughed, but you couldn't help but laugh too. But I wonder if there was some regret. Below the joke, by the time when the works came around, Queen had changed things. The album was a return to their more traditional rock roots, and it had hit songs like Radio Gaga that touched a nerve, but then the video came out. For the band I Want to Break Free, cross-dressed in a very funny way, a move to make fun of British soap operas. Fans in the UK thought that was funny, but one in America, that didn't make sense. The radio and TV stations refused to play the song, and Queen was done. We lost a very important international speed. The cracks were beginning to show, and in a video chat with Freddie of Night Flight made it clear when asked about his connection to he didn't hide behind a band that practiced. What they say is very different. People in the story like different things. I enjoy going to ballet and opera. Rock and roll is one of the things they like. It wasn't anger, it was just the truth. When asked how they had done the band to be together for so long, Freddie with his famous cheek replied, money. Darling, he said, then he softened and spoke a little more heart. No, I believe we like each other. We like the music we make. If we said they didn't like the music we made, they said goodbye, but he wasn't shy away from the truth is that he has no other options left. Okay, but the music is still there, and that's pretty much it still. Even with the popularity of the Friction, Queen continued to soar on the next tour. The works were so important that they sold out Wembley Stadium twice and sealed the deal. With a huge show at Nebworth in front of 120,000 fans, no one knew at the time, but that Nebworth show will be Freddie's last live show with what the band kept making music after that until Freddie's Too Soon, and in hindsight, whatever there was space or tension between them. That wasn't the whole picture. Brian May spoke about losing Freddie as if they had lost a that's the thing about complicated relationships that grow between them, they pull and stretch, but there was a shared journey at the heart of it all. Shared sound and a connection that went deep. More deeply than even Freddie was ready to go. Steve admitted on camera Walsh music over the years he was clearly annoyed by it. Whether it was because of clashing value-skewed ego or just plain not knowing that one of those people was Steve Walsh used to play in the band Kansas. Now Walsh is an open question when it comes to his from a musical point of view. He's good, focused and clearly loves what he does really, but when it comes to giving thanks for his peers, things get. What's strange is that Walsh once praised Queen as if they were his own top influences, but at the same time he attacked Freddie Mercury with a of poison that was hard to ignore. He said, Freddie, at one point, was a fool. The rest of the guys were great, not that theirs. Is there something wrong with that? That alone says a lot, even in a mean compliment, that you can hear the trouble with more than just Mercury's with his personality but with what he showed, that Freddie wasn't just a singer. He stood for freedom, individuality, and against. So when someone like Walsh makes claims like that, it doesn't just sound like you don't like it, it sounds like a stronger opposition to almost everything Freddie stood for, his being gay and the community that praised the Queen for it. Paul Weller, great musician, yes, but the man has a reputation for calling people names like he's going after it because it's part of his job. Bono, James Blunt, Robert Smith, and yes, Queen in particular. Freddie Weller's problem with Mercury wasn't subtle either. Wasn't about the music being too loud, not polished or over the top. No, it was personal. Weller seems to be couldn't quite get the thought of a rock star who didn't follow the rules, who didn't stay in one corner of the stage in jeans and a frown, but they danced instead in a leotard. She stole the show. Had the nerve to think rock could actually make people feel better. At one point Weller was famous for making fun of Mercury's would like to bring ballet to the workplace. Classes brushed it off with a mean it's easy to brush off, what a cunt. That's just more of Weller's print. It's bitter, but it says a lot. Freddie. They really believed in tearing down barriers based on race, gender, and putting together something lovely in there. The things Weller didn't just agree with, that he made fun of it and brushed off that dream to a show, a trick, or a fantasy that didn't belong in the world of heavy music, and that didn't happen. Sit well with Freddie's sex guns. Sit. It's bad now to think of Queen in the late 1970s, you might think of theater majesty and brilliance. Freddie Mercury taking charge stages like a king with a crown of sparkle and lightning, and when you think of the Sex Pistols, chaos, spit, safety pins and a plan to set fire to the setting up shop on the ground. So when the places where these two bands were in the exact same place where the sparks were, it was inevitable that the Sex Pistols would work. Hard to add a raw sense of rebellion to rock. They stood for all things sloppy without any filters and strongly against glam, which, of course, made Queen, who embraced theater plays and musical accuracy, their ideal target. Was Sid Vicious in certain made no secret of his not liking Freddie, while Johnny Rotten he had his own way of making trouble. Sid brought something grosser than this one time. They thought they were smart and made fun of Freddie with, "Have you been able to bring ballet to a lot of people yet?" Of course the comment was meant to be offensive, but Freddie never gave up, did he? Flail, according to Queen's longtime love Peter Hintz, a roadie, said Freddie just walked. Looked Sid over several times and then said, "Aren't you Stanley really mean or something?" And then, without raising his voice or stopping in his tracks, he grabbed him by the collar and threw him right. That moment says everything about what a difference between these two rock forces. Fred was looking for a fight, and Sid was it. For his part, on the other hand, he used space well and did it in a stylish way. The meeting wasn't just a fluke, the things were getting tense for a while. A few months before, Queen had skipped a TV appearance that was planned and the Sex Pistols had moved in. This look turned into one of the most famous interviews in British history, in the history of TV. It was already clear both of the groups were working on during the summer. There are different frequencies of 1977. Fate brought them back together. The Queen, this time at Wessex Sound Studios, worked on something in one room that would Sex Pistols have made the news around the world. They were in another recording their first album The Mood. Let's say less than Johnny Rotten is friendly but never willing to play Following the rules chose to crawl into Queen's studio on all fours up to the piano in Freddie's room says, "Hello Freddie." Crawl back out. Queen's producer wasn't amused and asked nicely that even though it didn't happen again, stunt, Brian. May later said that Rotten was surprisingly polite in Of Their Own. Sid Vicious, on the other hand, used one day, drunk or high, it's a different story. He broke into without being sober at all. Queen's control room, have you done it, in getting more people to see ballet yet? He slurred, making fun of Freddie's recent in an interview with Enemy about his love for ballet all over again. Freddie didn't even get, "Oh yes, Simon, fierce," he said with a blink. Cooley says, "We're trying our best, dear." Then, as Freddie always does, he began to quickly attach the safety pins. Sid's jacket made fun of the whole thing. Punk style when Sid came up to him. "What?" asked Freddie in a calm voice. "What are you going to do about it?" He grabbed without waiting for an answer. Sid by the lapels and pushed him out. The Roger Taylor later laughed about the door that calling Sid and an idiot, but Freddie took the meeting as a weird test, and one day it's clear that the thing is for everyone. Sid's bluster, he couldn't get rid of the meat again. A few months later in an interview with BBC Radio 1, he talked about full-on rant about how pictures can't convey, "That guy is so disgusting." Sid yelled, "His voice sounds like an old Turk's. Oh, the ballet is great, and this season, he's really awful." There you have it, the musician's Freddie Mercury wasn't shy about telling the truth. A raw, real side of him, and being blatantly human. It's a reminder that even famous people have hard times, their grudges and their truths, didn't we? We miss everyone who could have made Freddie's list. I'd love to hear what you think.